Welcome back. Protests around the globe and the racial reckoning that followed changed the world as we know it. But 1 year later, has there really been a significant change in the criminal justice system here in Canada? Joining us now is lawyer and human rights advocate Knia Singh joining us. Good morning, Knia.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Knia, what has changed for you and the cases that you've been representing? Have you seen any change for the better? Talk to us about where things stand right now, in your opinion.
In my opinion, I just see things unfortunately getting worse. The frequency with issues arising between community and police seems to be increasing. I have a strong feeling it has to do with COVID. But one has to remember that for centuries in North America, these problems have existed. And only since the advent of cell phones have they been captured. And only now are we seeing some type of public justice. So unfortunately, they still exist. I will say the Toronto Police has done a good job of trying to make amends, but it's not only senior officers that need to make the changes, the ones on the front line, and that's where we see most of the issues.
Knia, in terms of the conversation taking place between police services across the country and people like yourself who are in the community, who are bringing up real concerns here, important life and death concerns, do you find those conversations are being absorbed by police services, or is there some, I don't know if appeasement's the right word, but I think you know where I'm going with this. Do you find there's just some political chatter for the public?
No, I find there's a genuine interest in senior levels of police officers to make amends and make improvements. But I find that it's the trickle-down effect that has the issues, where other officers in their divisions are used to doing things a certain way. They're training the new ones, the rookies, and they get exposed to certain police culture that may not be desired. And then the desire from the top doesn't translate to the bottom. That's where I see the issue. And I think the public pressure has to still stay steady and increase. And it has to be one that is moving towards a more legislative base, actually change base. They know people are angry. They know the community's upset. They know there's been injustice. But now it's time for the legislative changes to actually take place.
It was 1 year ago today that George Floyd was murdered. And then we were all watching the court proceedings, and we saw that a conviction. People were shocked to see a conviction because they were so used to there not being a conviction for Derek Chauvin. What was your reaction to that? And did that leave you with some more hope, thinking, okay, you know, there was the video, you think that would be enough evidence, but so oftentimes there would be no conviction for similar crimes?
Exactly. It always takes me back to Rodney King being a teenager, watching that verdict and being flabbergasted as how you can have video evidence of someone getting brutally beaten and then officers are off. So that was the same fear with the Chauvin trial. But however, I think in the back of all of our minds, we probably knew that if they were to exonerate this officer, the place would have burned down. So there was somewhat of an incentive to make sure the right justice was done. Now, I'm concerned about cases that are not high profile, cases that nobody hears about. What is the decision going to be then? Are they going to still pay attention to the law and to justice? And if the camera wasn't there, are they going to just believe what an officer says versus what witnesses say? So these are important issues to grapple with. The Chauvin trial was a slight victory in this sense, but there's a lot more to be done.
Knia, I'm glad you brought up the sentencing, which, to remind everyone at home, for Derek Chauvin is June the 25th, so it'll be a Friday coming up next month. And Knia, I'm sure you heard the same thing. There was a lot of surprise and joy at the guilty on 3 counts for Derek Chauvin several weeks ago. But the one thing you did hear a lot is, hold on, there's a sentencing here. We're not really sure what's going to happen. What do you expect to happen on June the 25th with Derek Chauvin's sentencing?
I think they have to give at least 10 years in the sense that it has to be a verdict that satisfies the murder. And this is not just an accidental death. We know it was ruled a murder, but the callousness of it, the visuals, the 9 minutes, the complacency of the other officers all have to play a factor into the blameworthiness of this. So I'm hoping for the highest penalty possible, because that would definitely send a message to other officers that this is not condoned. However, we have to expect that there may be some mitigating of that because it's rarely been done. And to go from 0 to 100 all at once might be a challenge, but justice is justice, and justice in the eyes of the people would be the longest sentence possible for this former officer who committed this heinous crime in front of the world.
Nia, it's a huge question, but what do we do to move forward? Where do we begin with answers, with healing, with making things better?
Well, to move forward, we have to address things like Ijaz Chowdhury. We have to address DeAndre Campbell. We have to address Jamal Francique. We have to address Regis Korchinski-Paquette. We have to address all of these lives, Jermaine Carby, particular in 2014. All of these deaths at the hands of police or in police involvement lose their traction. They don't maintain big stories, and there's no critical investigation. Jamal Francique is a client, his family's a client of mine. He was shot and killed in January 2020. The SIU cleared them in a year later. And then on May 4th, we released a comprehensive legal inquiry to address the shortcomings of that report. We addressed all the fallacies, all the discrepancies, and all the things that could have been evaluated differently. We haven't received a response from the Attorney General. We haven't seen much uptake. These are the things, media attention to murders or killings or questionable circumstances is what provides change. Without the media support, we would never have this change. So that is exactly what we need.
Where do you stand on how mental health is being handled with police across the country? Because that is also an element to this where people are just screaming that there is not enough training. There's not enough care being taken into a person who has police come to their situation or to their home, and they are not, and they don't need a gun in their face. They need support of a very, very different kind. And there are people in uniform who are not near equipped to handle that in the moment, and then a disaster takes place. Where do you stand on the training given to police officers in terms of mental health?
I think you hit the nail on the head. You said there's not enough care. I think there's enough training. The training is there. We all know the concepts. We know to approach people with mental health issues in a more discretionary manner, give them a chance, talk it out. But the care is not being taken place. I know officers have a very tough job. They're under high pressure. So when they arrive on the scene, they may think this scenario is similar to the one they've experienced, but they should never go into that. They are professionals. And just like lawyers, we have to evaluate each of our cases differently, uniquely. And officers must do the same when they evaluate the mental health situation of a scenario. And I think if they take more care, speaking to, listening to, not jumping to conclusions, not stereotyping, not racially profiling. These things will all help in getting resolutions and helping confrontations that turn violent, not turn violent. So the care must be taken. I don't think any amount of training is going to change the level of care officers need to take when it comes to dealing with each case they encounter.
And to anyone who says it's not a problem here in Canada, you're just speaking about, case after case yourself and dealing with racial profiling yourself. Growing up, you've experienced it, I know, Knia. So thank you so much for taking time today.
Thank you, Knia.
Oh, thank you for having me, and God bless.
You too.
Take care. Knia Singh, again, a human rights advocate. He is a lawyer. And just to tie a bow on it, there are a lot of families that don't feel they have a voice. Knia is helping them have a voice. So we appreciate him joining us today. We're going to take a break. More Breakfast Television coming up after this.